Imagine a completely ordinary morning. You walk into the familiar kitchen, open the refrigerator. The light is still on, but inside it is almost empty. Not because you forgot to shop, but because the stores are out of stock. The supply chain has stopped, and suddenly the money in your wallet cannot help anymore. The most frightening part of a crisis is not a loud explosion. It begins very quietly, with the moment you realize you are no longer able to care for your family as before. Most people think survival preparation must cost a lot of money, but the truth is sometimes the opposite. There are foods so cheap you walk past without noticing, yet they are exactly what keep a family calm in the most unstable days. This month, I have quietly stockpiled 10 such foods. All of them are cheap, easy to find, and durable enough to last when many other things disappear. Especially, there is one item that costs only about $1, but the paradox is that it is also the very thing many people never prepare. Because when that day truly comes, you will not wish you were richer. You will only wish that you had prepared a little earlier. And we will begin with that cheapest item. 10. Baking soda. In a real crisis, the first thing that saves you sometimes costs only $1. Not expensive survival gear or military rations, just a small box resting quietly on the lowest corner of a supermarket shelf. This is the cheapest item I bought this month. So small that many people walk past without ever thinking it matters. But every difficult time repeats the same pattern. The first things to disappear are often the cheap items used every day. All it takes is a storm, a few days without power or stores closing earlier than usual, and familiar life has already begun to drift off course. Baking soda almost never spoils over time because it is a dry mineral compound, with no water, no oil, no environment for bacteria to live, and it can sit quietly on a shelf for years with almost no change. When stomach medicine is hard to find, a small diluted amount can temporarily soothe burning discomfort. When a refrigerator loses power and develops odor, a small box can absorb the unpleasant smell. When cleaning products become expensive, it is still enough to clean basic household surfaces. Few people remember that a handful of baking soda can also help smother a small grease fire in a pan by releasing CO2 when exposed to high heat. And sometimes an item that costs $1 can prevent an accident far greater than its price. Of course, this is not something to use without limits, and people with heart or blood pressure conditions need to be cautious when using it for the stomach. Because understanding the limits of an item is just as important as knowing its uses. Of course, this is only a temporary tip, not a substitute for medication or professional medical advice. What truly matters is not the baking soda, but the moment you buy it before you need it. Because what causes people to panic is rarely total absence, but the realization that they could have prepared earlier. $1 cannot buy safety, but sometimes it buys something far more valuable, calm that arrives before fear. And if you want to continue learning how to keep your family steady in difficult times, you can subscribe to the channel. Here we do not talk about fear, we talk about quiet readiness. 9. Potatoes. If one day you were forced to choose only one food to keep living, history often shows the answer is not meat, not bread, but potatoes. Not luxurious, not expensive, but enough energy, enough micronutrients, enough fullness to keep a person standing one more day. And in truly difficult times, one more day sometimes becomes the boundary between collapse and continued survival. There is a truth rarely spoken plainly. Potatoes are one of the very few foods a human being can rely on almost alone for a long time. Not because they are perfect, but because they are enough. Enough energy to work. enough nutrition to avoid rapid collapse, simple enough to appear on the tables of the poor for centuries. In earlier Europe, millions of families passed through winters, wars, and economic decline with meals that revolved repeatedly around potatoes. History does not remember the elaborate dishes of peaceful times. History remembers what kept people from starving, and potatoes are among the very few names in that memory. But history also left a chilling warning. When potato harvests failed in 19th century Ireland, famine erupted so quickly that millions were forced to leave their homeland, and countless others never made it elsewhere. It revealed a simple but cruel truth. Sometimes the stability of an entire community depends on a single root lying silently beneath the soil. The value of potatoes today has not changed. When money becomes tight, they are still cheap. When power outages make refrigerators useless, they can still be cooked. When fresh food slowly turns into a luxury, they remain enough to keep the body from falling into the biological panic of hunger. I once read a very short comment beneath a video about economic crisis. A father wrote that his family of 4 survived long months of unemployment mainly because of discounted bags of potatoes. He did not call them delicious meals. He wrote only one sentence: "At least we still had dinner together." And there is a very cold truth that every crisis eventually teaches again. When choices disappear, food is no longer chosen for taste, but for its ability to keep you alive one more day. Potatoes do not represent abundance. They represent the ability to keep living when everything begins to grow difficult. And throughout hundreds of years of history, when other choices slowly leave the table, potatoes are often not the most delicious thing remaining, but they are the last thing still there. Have you ever gone through a time when meals had to become simpler than usual? If so, what did you eat the most during that period? 8. Salt. There are things in ordinary life that are almost never noticed until they disappear. Salt is one of them. It rests quietly on the kitchen shelf, so cheap that we forget its true value. Yet scientifically, salt is almost impossible to spoil. Pure sodium chloride contains no protein, no fat, no free moisture, and it does not create an environment for bacteria or mold to grow. As long as it is kept dry and sealed, salt can last for many years, even generations, with almost no change in usefulness. Before refrigeration or the understanding of microorganisms, salt was the most important food preservation tool humanity had. Meat was salted to last through winter. Fish was cured for long journeys. And in many ancient civilizations, salt was valuable enough to be used as wages. The English word salary also comes from salt, a small detail that reveals the life-sustaining role of salt in human survival history. Today, we rarely think about salt that way, but when extended power outages stop freezers from working, salt can still help slow food spoilage. When the body is exhausted from dehydration, a solution of clean water mixed with the correct ratio of salt and sugar can temporarily support electrolyte balance. The same principle used in oral rehydration solutions of the World Health Organization. Even for minor wounds, diluted salt water remains a simple cleaning method, used long before modern antiseptics appeared. I once read a comment under a previous video. After a winter storm in Texas, we lost power for nearly 3 days. The freezer failed completely, but because we had salt in the kitchen, we were still able to preserve the remaining meat long enough not to throw everything away. That was not a grand story, but in a real crisis, the difference between calm and panic often lies in very small details like that. Salt is not glamorous, not expensive, and not something people feel proud to store. But when the outside world becomes unstable, A quiet jar of salt in the corner of the kitchen can remind us that silent preparation is always stronger than fear that arrives too late. And sometimes, what keeps a person standing is not something grand, but only a very small white grain enough to extend one more ordinary day. 7. White sugar. There are foods that help a person survive for many months, but there are also things that keep you standing for just a few minutes. White sugar belongs to the second group. Scientifically, sugar almost never creates an environment for other life to grow. No protein, no fat, no free moisture. Bacteria cannot use it to multiply, and mold struggles to survive if it is kept dry and sealed. As long as moisture and strange odors are avoided, a bag of sugar can sit for a very long time with almost no change. That quiet durability makes it one of the simplest, yet most reliable energy sources in any survival supply. But the true value of sugar is not in storage time. It is in speed. When the body is exhausted from lack of food, when blood pressure drops, when the mind begins to feel dizzy from prolonged hunger, just a small amount of sugar dissolved in water can help the body regain enough energy to continue a little farther. In emergency medicine, the principle of replenishing sugar and salt to sustain life has been used for a very long time. Not because it is perfect, but because it is fast enough to keep a person from collapsing immediately. Throughout the history of famine and war, the things that save lives are often not large meals. Sometimes it is only a cup of warm water with a little sugar, enough for a mother to still have the strength to carry her child forward, enough for a worker to stand again after believing no strength remained. Those moments are rarely written into history books, yet they repeat in nearly every crisis humanity has endured. Sugar also carries a deeply human value that few people mention: the ability to preserve a sense of normalcy. A little sweetness in a cup of hot tea, a small spoon in a thin bowl of porridge, may not add much fullness, but it reminds us that life still holds gentle things that have not disappeared. And in the days when the spirit is closest to collapse, that small feeling is often what helps a person move through one more day. White sugar does not represent abundance. It represents the chance to stand again when the body has nearly reached its limit. Not a long-term source of life like rice or beans, but an immediate one. The thing that keeps you from falling before you reach the next meal. And sometimes, in the fragile boundary between exhaustion and continuing forward, just a very small sweetness is enough to keep a person with life a little longer. If today you could keep only 3 items in your kitchen, what would you choose to keep your family from panicking during a week without power? 6. Carrots. In most emergency stockpiling lists, carrots almost never appear in a prominent position. They do not provide as many calories as rice, are not as rich in protein as beans, and do not last for decades like salt. Yet that very modesty makes carrots one of the most quietly important foods when life begins to lose stability. Carrots are among the cheapest vegetables yet store for a surprisingly long time. In cool, dry, and dark conditions, fresh carrots can last for many weeks to several months. And in wartime European history, they were stored in underground cellars to sustain entire families through winter. Not because they were delicious, but because they preserved what the body still needed when everything else was gone. When crisis strikes, people naturally think of calories first. It is a basic survival instinct. But medicine reveals another truth. Prolonged vitamin A deficiency can weaken vision, immunity, and endurance within just a few months, even if you still have enough energy to live. This means many people do not collapse from hunger, but from silent nutritional depletion. And this is the point most people overlook. Communities that survived war rarely endured because of meat. They survived because of simple, growable, inexpensive foods, rich in micronutrients like carrots. Beta-carotene in carrots supports vision in low-light conditions, something that was once extremely important during prolonged power outages. Fiber helps stabilize digestion when diets become poor. And the gentle natural sweetness brings a rare sense of normalcy in days when everything else is changing. I once read a very simple comment. During the lockdown, the last thing left in my kitchen was a few carrots. Not enough to feel full, but enough to cook a hot bowl of soup and feel that I was still living like a normal human being. That is what carrots truly offer. Not quick fullness, but the ability to avoid slow collapse. In survival, calories help you live through today. But quiet nutrition is what determines whether you still have the strength to keep going tomorrow. And sometimes, the boundary between exhaustion and continuing forward is only a few carrots resting silently in the corner of the kitchen, waiting for the day you truly need them. 5. Dry pasta. There are foods that keep your body alive, and there are also foods that do something quieter. They keep life feeling the same as before. Dry pasta belongs to the second group. It lasts for one very simple reason. It contains almost no moisture. Without water, bacteria cannot survive, mold cannot spread, and time has almost nothing left to destroy. As long as it is kept dry and sealed, those seemingly ordinary strands can rest for a very long time, waiting until people truly need them. But what makes pasta special is not its storage life, but the feeling it preserves in days that begin to fall into disorder. In a real crisis, people do not collapse first from lack of calories. They collapse when they realize familiar things have disappeared. An ordinary dinner, the smell of hot food, the feeling of family still sitting together as every day before. With only boiling water, a little salt, perhaps some cooking oil or a few remaining canned pieces, pasta can still become a complete meal. Not luxurious, but warm enough to soften anxiety, filling enough to stop the body from panicking, and familiar enough to remind us that life has not completely gone. I once read a very short comment from a father after many days without power. He said that on the first night, when the entire neighborhood sank into darkness, his family was still able to cook a simple pot of pasta on a small gas stove. No meat, no sauce, just noodles, salt, and a little oil. But he wrote that meal made the children less afraid than any words of reassurance. Because there is a very cold truth that every crisis eventually reveals. The most frightening thing is not the lack of food, but the feeling that normal life has ended. Pasta is not the food of the harshest survival days. It is the food of the fragile boundary between stability and chaos, where a familiar meal can still keep the human spirit standing for one more night. And sometimes, as long as your family can still sit down before a bowl of hot noodles like every other day. The outside world may be changing very quickly, but inside that small kitchen, life has not yet collapsed. There is a truth about crisis that is rarely spoken plainly. Most people do not fall on the first day, not because they are stronger, but because the body still has enough energy to believe everything will be okay. But real crisis does not kill you with hunger immediately. It takes things away one by one, very slowly, very quietly. First, the familiar choices, then the feeling of safety, then the ability to care for the people you love. And one day, the most frightening thing is not the lack of food, but realizing you did not prepare in time. That is why the simple foods in this list are not just food. They are time. One more day to think. one more week to manage, and sometimes one more chance for things to change in time. Because in every crisis that has ever happened, those who survived longer were not the strongest, but the ones who had more time. And the next part is exactly what helps you keep that time. 4. Oats. Not every food that helps people endure difficult days needs to be strong or loud. Some things exist very quietly, almost unnoticed in times of peace, yet become precious when life begins to slow down. Oats are one of them, steamed and dried to the point where bacteria struggle to grow, and containing very little natural oil so they do not spoil quickly over time. Oats seem almost designed for long endurance. With only hot water, a warm bowl of porridge forms, gentle on the stomach, supportive of the heart, and soft enough for a body changing with age. Not elaborate, not complicated, yet enough to begin a new day without adding more fatigue to the body. In times of instability, people often talk about how to survive the night. But there is a truth mentioned far less. What is much harder is still wanting to wake up the next morning. When worry stretches on, when bad news repeats itself, the first thing people sometimes lose is not food, but the sense of peace needed to begin a new day. A hot bowl of oatmeal cannot change the outside world. It cannot stop a crisis, nor make uncertainty disappear. But it preserves something very small, yet profoundly important: the familiar rhythm of the morning. And sometimes, small things like that help the human spirit remain steady longer than any words of encouragement. Because in every upheaval, the most valuable part of a day is not always achieving something great, but simply still having a quiet morning to begin again. And as long as a person can still sit down before such a simple breakfast, life, no matter how fragile, has not truly left them. In your most difficult moments, what food helped you feel that everything was still a little normal? 3. Dried beans. Not every source of survival comes from expensive things. In many difficult periods of history, what kept people alive were only small, dry, and quiet seeds like beans. Dried beans endure because their structure almost prevents spoilage. Low moisture, very little natural oil, and almost no environment for bacteria or mold to grow if kept dry and sealed. With proper storage, they can rest for many years while retaining most of their original nutritional value. But what makes beans truly special is not their long storage life, but their ability to replace far more expensive foods. In normal times, protein usually comes from meat, fish, or milk. But when war, economic decline, or crop failure occurs, those food sources are often the first to disappear. At that point, beans are no longer a side dish, but become a primary source of survival. Enough protein to maintain strength, enough energy to keep working, and simple enough to sustain an entire family for a long time. For centuries, from poor farming communities to periods of severe food scarcity, beans have always appeared as a quiet part of survival. Absent from the feasts of peaceful times, yet present on the table when people needed one more day to keep going. There is a very cold truth that history continues to repeat. In crisis, food is no longer chosen for taste, but for its ability to keep people standing against hunger. Dried beans do not promise abundance. They offer something far simpler: more time to live. And sometimes, that small amount of time is exactly what determines whether a family still has the strength to move through upheaval or must stop halfway. 2. White rice. White rice is durable not because of luck. During the milling process, the natural oil layer is almost completely removed, and without oil, there is nothing left to spoil easily over time. That simplicity makes rice one of the most quietly enduring foods humanity has ever kept close. As long as it is stored dry, sealed, and protected from moisture, a sack of rice can rest for many years with almost no change. Some food reserves have revealed a very quiet truth. Sometimes food lasts longer than the life of the person who stored it. But the true value of rice is not in its long storage life. It lies in the moment the world begins to grow scarce, when familiar choices slowly disappear, and people are forced to return to the most basic things in order to survive. Throughout the history of famine and war, rice has never been a luxury food. It has simply been the thing that appears on the tables of families hoping to be full enough to make it through tomorrow. Not elaborate, not complicated, yet enough energy to keep the body standing against prolonged hunger. There is a very cold truth that every crisis leaves behind. When all choices disappear, people do not search for the most delicious thing, but for what helps them continue living. And in many places around the world, the final answer is often simply rice. A pot of hot rice does not stop the outside world. It does not erase worry nor change what is collapsing. But it preserves a small yet profoundly important signal. Life is still continuing, and the family still has enough strength to sit together. Because in the most fragile moments, what keeps people from despair is sometimes simply that there is still rice to eat. And when a small kitchen still holds the quiet aroma of hot rice, it may be the final sign that the crisis has not truly won. One, low-cost powdered milk. Not the cheapest item on the list, yet the one that quietly keeps the body from weakening as fresh milk, meat, and green vegetables gradually become luxuries. Powdered milk has almost all of its water removed. Without moisture, bacteria no longer have an environment to grow. That very scientific simplicity allows it to rest on a shelf for many years, waiting for the day it is truly needed. The value of a box of powdered milk is not in its weight, but in the very small things inside. Calcium that keeps bones from weakening, protein that helps the body recover, and nutrition gentle enough for the elderly, the sick, or young children to still receive when ordinary meals disappear. Just a small spoon mixed into warm water can be a late-night glass of milk for a feverish child. The last bit of energy at the end of the day for someone exhausted, and sometimes simply the feeling that a family still has a way to care for one another. In many crises, the first thing to disappear is not money, but the ability to nourish the weakest. And the most frightening moment is when you watch someone you love grow weaker, while nothing in the kitchen is enough to help them recover. Powdered milk cannot change the outside world. It cannot stop upheaval nor erase worry, but it preserves something far more important. The body still has enough strength to step through one more day. Sometimes, in the most fragile moments of life, peace does not come from grand things, but simply from still having the ability to care for the people you love. That is why this simple item stands in the final position. Not because it is expensive, but because when there is still a warm glass of milk in the home, hope has usually not left. Crisis does not announce itself. It simply arrives at the moment you were not ready. Preparing in advance does not make you richer. It does not make you more special. But on the day everything becomes unstable, it preserves something very precious: calm. And in most crises that have ever happened, those who kept that calm were often the ones who went the farthest. If today you could choose only 3 items to store in advance, what would you choose? Share in the comments below. I read them all. And if you are preparing quietly, without panic, you can subscribe to the channel. Here we do not talk about fear. we talk about calm readiness.